Lucas, my son, you're testing my patience right now, buddy. What's up, Internet? You're tuning in episode 39 of the FlipScreen Games Podcast, a weekly video game podcast where two best buds from different nations come together to discuss the wide world of video games. I'm your host, Pete and Bessie, joined, as always, by my very good friend and co-host, Mr. Steven Radford.
Hello, hello.
Hello, Steve. Welcome back.
Yeah, it's good to be back. It feels like forever since we recorded one of these, weirdly. I don't know why.
Well, because, we're on a weird schedule right now. Because, I was on vacation, so we didn't record together for a while. And then we came back, and we did recordings, the day I came back, or the day after I came back. And then we haven't sunk up for, a week again. So it's, we have recorded somewhat recently, but in the last 2 weeks, it's probably the least amount that we've seen each other since, I don't know, 2020.
Yeah, since we started FlipScreen at the very least.
Even before that, probably. I mean, right? It was probably since you started dating Macaulay. It would probably be the next most time. So yeah, I'm glad to be back. I'm glad to have an opportunity to chat with you today. We have a lot to talk about. The first thing that before we even get into the plugs and everything, I'm not burying the lead. I gotta drop this bomb on everybody. I got a Steam Deck. We got it. We got it. Look, you could see Steve and me in the reflection. This is great stuff. Yeah, I got a Steam Deck, everybody. I have had it for. Technically, I've owned it for over a week. It while I was on vacation. Well, I'll start by saying shout out to Mango from the community, who hooked me up with their Steam Deck because they had gotten one of the early pre-orders and then wasn't able to get it and asked if anybody in the community wanted it. They hooked me up. It was awesome. So shout out to Mango. I had it sent to my dad's house in New Jersey because I was going to be on vacation when it showed up, and I had a friend looking in on the house and everything, but I didn't want to chance the package getting picked up because Lord knows if Valve would be able to send me a replacement or whatever, right? So it was sitting at my dad's for about a week, and I finally had some time to jet down there, so I literally drove to my dad's, got the package, and turned right back around so that I could go and futz around with it. So I've been playing with it for a couple days now. I've got some early impressions that we'll talk about in the what we're playing section, but it's nothing like new hardware,
Yeah, I know, and hardware that good, there's nothing quite like it. But we'll talk about it. I'm interested to hear your thoughts specifically on the control layout, because you were very much I don't think a believer in it.
I have some thoughts that I'm excited to share for sure. But so we'll talk all about that and much more on this week's episode of the FlipScreen Games Podcast. But before that, let me remind you that this episode of the show is brought to you by our Patreon producers for the month of May. They are, of course, Christian Oliveria, Christopher Valenz, Gabriel Hasselmeyer, a.k.a. Asobi, Mary Berry, Smokey Shake, Wakahula, and Zaid Ida. Thank you all so much for your support over on patreon.com/FlipScreenGames. Y'all are the realest of the real, and we appreciate your support of this fine program. But if you want to show your support and you're not one of those folks, there's a bunch of ways you can do that. Of course, you can head over to the Patreon. You can get all kinds of good perks and goodies. You can get our extra podcast, One More Thing, that's just for patrons, and a bunch of other cool stuff. You can get early access to the show. You can get some exclusive goodies in the Discord and vote on Twitch streams and all kinds of stuff. So if you want to show your support, that's the best way to do so. Go above and beyond. We greatly appreciate it. But of course, there's a bunch of other ways you can get involved. Head over to flipscreen.games. That's our website where you can find links to our Discord, where we've got an always growing community of gamers just like you. It is a safe, inclusive place for you to talk video games. And hey, maybe get yourself a Steam Deck. You never know. So go check it out. It's a great community. We hope you'll come be a part of it. And if you want to get some more content from us, of course, head over to the YouTube channel, head over to the Twitch channel. Wherever you get your video game content, we're probably over there making something for you. So I hope you'll go and check it out. So let's get into what we're playing. Steve, I have just been playing with my Steam Deck. So we can either start there or we can talk about your stuff, and then we'll do a Steam Deck section next. How's that sound?
Mine's also on Steam Deck, so we can start.
All right, there we go. So what have you been playing?
So I had some friends staying this week, and Macaulay was working an early shift, so they were going to bed early. And we ended up staying up late and we wanted to play some horror games. So we checked out this series called Fears to Fathom, which is by this solo developer called Rail. Oh my God. It's such a cool concept for a series where he takes real, quote unquote, real stories. The first one was from like a Reddit post of like scary stories that
Like
that
real
happen to
scary
people.
stories kind of
Yeah,
thing.
like real scary stories. Like the first one's called Home Alone, and like your parents have left you at home, or they go away on a
You
trip.
play
You're
Macaulay
like a 14-year
Culkin.
old. Yeah, you play
Yeah.
Macaulay Culkin, but no, you're like in the house
So I'm
on your
sorry, wait,
own.
you're characterizing that as one of the quote unquote real stories though. Is Home Alone.
So this is one of the quote unquote real stories that your parents have gone away. You're 14 and they've left you at home. They've left like a lasagna in the fridge, and you go and eat it. And
You
you
end
go
up in
about
New
your
York
day.
City and you run into Donald Trump. No? Okay. All right.
But yeah, no, not quite. So then your like sleeping patterns fucked, and you get a text message from your mum, and she sent you a picture from the neighbor, and there's a weird, creepy man at your door, and it's like, who the hell is that? Don't answer the door. But did you remember to lock the back door, or did they get into the house? And
Oh
yeah,
no.
it's truly terrifying, and there's like some really scary moments in it. And it was just like a really short experience. And the second one was even longer. It's about it's called Hitchhike. I can't remember the name of it, but it's like a hitchhiker story, and your car ends up clunking out, and you get a lift to a motel, and stuff happens. I've never screamed, and like I like ended up kicking my leg out and like booting stuff off the table. It was truly terrifying. It was like a really scary experience, and it was really cool to play with friends, and like we're all making the decisions and like trying to figure out how do we beat this, how do you do it. And there's like a really cool moment in that second game where you have to you like go into a closet to hide as someone breaks into your hotel room, and it uses the microphone on your device. And if you make too much
They
noise,
can hear you.
they will hear you, and they will find you in the closet, and they will essentially kill you. It's like the end of the
That's
game.
scary.
It's really fucking cool. We played it on the Steam Deck docked to my TV. It's designed for keyboard and mouse, but I was able to map it all to a DualSense controller, and the DualSense is really cool because the touchpad, you can actually use the touchpad for like fine mouse controls. It works similar to the
Oh.
touchpad
Okay.
that's on the Steam Deck itself. So it was really cool, and we were able to play it just with a controller rather than a keyboard and mouse, which is what the game was designed for.
So,
Not the best experience with a controller, but it worked really well.
real quick question. You said you docked it. How? Do you have like
So
a
I
third party
bought
dock or?
Yeah, I bought an Amazon Basics USB dongle, and it cost me £17, and it works flawlessly. So you just plug it in, you plug it into your TV, the UI scales up to 4K, and then it just plays the games. The games in like gaming mode are restricted to 800p, but if you go into desktop mode, you can boot them up in whatever resolution you want. And I know that's probably going to be the next big update that Valve pushes out, is so that it detects the correct resolution in games.
Interesting. Okay. Huh. So you just have like a USB C to a regular HDMI, and you just
So it's like a little USB, yeah, it's like a little dongle, and I can post a link to the one I've bought down in the description on YouTube or in the show notes so people know. And it's just a little USB-C. It's like a metal thing. You plug your USB-C power cable into it. You plug an HDMI cable into it, and it's got a USB-A port on it, so you could plug a mouse or keyboard in if you wanted, or like another USB hub. Works really well, and I bought that one because it does 4K at 60 frames per second. So a lot of them will only do 4K at 30 frames per
Okay.
second. So you need to make sure that you get one that can go up. To be fair though, it's very unlikely you'll get any game that can hit 4K at 60 frames per second. But we tried a bunch of games out with it. We played some Jackbox Party Pack 8 as well, the one that we did on stream for our New Year's stream. That worked great as well, and that scaled up to the correct resolution of the TV as well.
nice.
Worked flawlessly. So I'm really impressed with with it. And yeah, Fears to Fathom, such a great series. If you haven't checked them out, the first one's free, so I highly recommend people check out the first one. And then if you like it, it's $3 for each episode. So episode 2 is $3. He's working on episode 3 at the moment, which I'm really excited about. And he's like accepting stories as well. So if you have like a cool story, like of a creepy thing that happened to you, you can send it to him. He's got like a Gmail address that you can send to, and he's
That's
like
cool.
making them into episodes.
Very cool. You'll have to send me that that information. I would love to take a look at that adapter.
I would love you to stream them. I think it would be so fun to watch you stream the two. I know Asobi messaged me on Twitter and was just like, oh my god, that closet section as well, which was really funny.
Yeah, I'd do it. I'm a huge baby about horror games, so I really only like to play them to make content because people will laugh.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you definitely should, because like it's just something about those games. It's just this sense of anxiety that you have the entire time you're playing. You're just like, what's going to happen? Because there's such normal scenarios. Like your parents have left you at home, and you're eating a lasagna in front of the TV. Like what crazy is going to happen?
what could
there?
go wrong?
Yeah.
That's
And
fun.
I love the fact that there's like text messages back and forth between multiple characters, like my mum, my dad, and like my friend were all texting me at once because my mum couldn't get a hold of me because I was like sleeping. And then you like go downstairs and look out the window, and there's like a creepy guy there, and it's like, what the fuck? Who is that? There's like moments where you might see like shadows, and it's like, was that a person? Was it just a shadow? Like, what's going on?
Oh my god, yeah, that sounds not up my alley, but I think I'd have fun playing it. Yeah.
I
Awesome.
think people would love to see you play it.
Yeah, maybe we should do like a late stream on like a Friday night or something, and
Yeah, that would be
play
really
some
fun.
horror games. You got to stay up though and watch and laugh.
Yeah, I'll be up on watch and laugh, and even if I'm not on stream, I'll be in the chat 100% watching you play.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll have to make that happen. But yeah, that's cool. That sounds great. I'm interested in that tech. I was thinking about that while I was playing with it, like, because I know there's plans to have a dock at some point, and I wonder, like, are they gonna have like native controller support and things like that, where you can, because it already supports Bluetooth and everything, so like theoretically you should be able to like dock it and use it like a console eventually.
Yeah, you absolutely can. You can do any controller you want. If you do a DualSense, it will change all the buttons to be like, rather than it says Steam at the bottom, it'll be like the PlayStation logo. It'll be like X and circle instead
Oh,
of
really?
A and B. Like the whole interface changes to map to that controller.
That's cool.
Which is really cool. And there's a bunch of community layouts, as you've probably explored when in your use of it, that are specifically for the DualSense.
Yes.
Or for the Xbox One and stuff. So you can download those layouts specifically for that controller, which is really cool. Like pretty much every game I've played, if they're big enough, like Fears to Fathom, I think it's a fairly small and relatively new game, so it didn't have any community layouts. So I might actually upload the ones that I've done for it.
You should, yeah.
They work pretty well.
I really like that system, and how quick it is. Like, it's very easy to go and like go to the game info while you're already in the game and just be like, and try a bunch of different layouts. And like, there's a option to just publish your layout right away, and like it's very, very seamless, which is cool. I literally the only problem I've actually run into with the layouts, because I tried a bunch of games, so I'll rattle off the games that I tried, and I want to talk about each of them individually at least a little bit, because I went through, and so, I guess to give my perspective on my time with the Steam Deck so far, I'm really enjoying it. I think it's a really cool piece of tech. I'm having fun playing with it. I feel like I've barely scratched the surface of what I can do with it. Like, I only just last night got Emudeck installed, but I don't have any ROMs or anything on it yet. I like just uploaded my whole library so that I could go and download it and start playing around with that stuff.
How did you find that? Because the easiest way to get your library on, by the way, is with a USB-C hub and just plug a hard drive or USB stick in, and then you can just drag them over. Way quicker than downloading them individually onto your device.
I didn't think about that. I don't have anything where I can do that though. I don't have like I don't have anything that has like a USB-C.
Okay, might be worth investing in that Amazon Basics dongle because it'll kill two birds with one
Yeah,
stone.
send me
Then
the
you've
link.
got,
I'm literally gonna buy it tonight. So and maybe it'll show up by tomorrow. But I went and put all my ROMs on a Google Drive folder, and I was gonna just go download them and
Oh yeah, that's easy enough. Like
extract it.
I selected the ones I knew I wanted to play. So I really wanted to play Wind Waker. I really wanted to play Persona
Yeah.
5. So I've just like focused in on a bunch. But how did you find the setup? Because I know a few people had issues with it, like failing. I had no issues whatsoever with Emudeck. It was flawless.
I didn't have any issues with Emudeck. I actually had issues with the Steam software. Like actually
Okay.
booting it up the first time. It went through the installation process, and I had this apparently a fairly common glitch where the bar was like the progress bar was stuck at like 20%, but it said I had 1 second to go, and I was like, it's probably just buffering. I'll let it sit for a couple minutes, and nothing was happening. All I had to do was restart it, and it made me go through the process again, but the second install worked just fine. For Emudeck, I didn't have any problems, but also I haven't tested any of the ROMs, so like there's a chance that maybe something did go wrong with the install, but seemingly it was fine, and it gave me an alert where it's like, hey, like the Switch one isn't, like, you need to go get the BIOS files yourself, and the PlayStation one, you need to go get the BIOS files yourself. But aside from that, it seemed to work pretty seamlessly. I was able to just launch it in desktop mode, navigate to the website, and download the launcher, and it did the rest. I don't think the instructions on their site are very good. They're like a little bit like, it's like, oh, here's the 5-step process, but it doesn't really tell you like it's like, oh, launch the Steam ROM manager, and I'm like, I don't know, is that a
It's on the desktop.
yeah, and it's
enough.
like
Yeah.
I figured that out myself, but it's like you could pictures, maybe a video, something like, give me like
I mean, it's an open source project, so if anyone wants to improve the
Yeah.
documentation, they definitely can. I mean, I very much appreciate it. Basically one person has made that, and I think
don't get me
it's
wrong,
awesome.
I'm
Yeah.
not trying to complain. It's awesome that they've built it out in this way, but I remember
Yeah.
reading it and I was like, I don't understand these instructions, and I feel like I should, and like
No, that's totally fair.
it was self-explanatory once I like started digging around a little bit, but if you're the kind of user that I generally am, right? Well, when we were talking about the Steam Deck initially, and I was like, oh, like how much work do you have to do to set it up? Like how much of it is fooling around with settings versus just playing games? And I'll tell you, it's a lot. It's a lot of fooling around with settings rather than playing games. And I think that's neither a pro or a con. It's just a reality of the device and like where it is right now.
I think it's a reality of PC gaming in general, right?
Right.
And I think that's the problem is, I think a lot of people look at the device and they're like, this isn't a PC, this is a handheld console, right? But
It's PC.
It's built in a way that this is a PC, and PC players expect to be able to go in and go like, well, actually, I want to get a little bit more frame rate out of this, or I want to get a little bit more resolution, and they can do that.
And where I'm at with it is, I think today, like right now, I think that for many types of gamers, the amount of work you have to do will seem impenetrable. But I also think if you're the type of person who listens to this podcast, if you think you want one, if you've been sitting being like, oh, I'm missing out, I want this, I think you probably will get on okay with it. Because like, even as somebody as averse to that kind of like, I don't want to fiddle around, I don't want to change the resolutions and stuff, I want to like click a toggle and I want the machine to do everything for me. It's surprisingly far along for something that is a brand new piece of tech. And literally, like, I don't know if you've experienced this, but when I first opened it, I had to like update the software and everything, and I literally got a message where they're like, hey, congratulations on having one of the first Steam Decks off the line. As a result, like, we need to update the BIOS, and it's going to take you to this weird sideways old-timey load screen. Don't worry, like, it's not bricking. Like, I feel like I'm playing a development piece of hardware, right? And I feel like I have something that's brand new, that is not tested, that is going to continue to evolve. And
do you know what? For me, that's so exciting, because in the month I've had this, I've had 3 major updates, and I'll talk about the beta update that came out this week, which I think just totally changes the game on the Steam Deck and makes it an even more phenomenal device for me.
I'm interested to hear what the difference is, because I bet you it's things I've already benefited from. And that is the thing I was driving to is I think even knowing all those things, even having those biases that I have as a player who prefers console and doesn't want to mess around with a PC like that, I think the Steam Deck is already surprisingly far along with what the native settings are. So to list the games that I played Cuphead, Duck Game, Dragon Age Origins, Left 4 Dead, and Stacklands. So I played a pretty random assortment of games, right?
I was gonna say, yeah, that's like very across the board. There's some that are very controller driven, some like Stacklands that are very much mouse driven.
Right, and I wanted to mess around with those to get a sense for what the different control schemes were like, how malleable they were, how are the base like settings, because like Steve said, right, there's the whole community thing where for each individual game in the Steam Community Hub, they have a new section that's all, I mean, it's probably not new, but it's highlighted in a way I haven't seen on Steam, where you can go and look at mappings that other people have made. But there's also, for certain games, right, like for Left 4 Dead 2, which is obviously a Valve title, they have an official Valve developed layout. But then they also have a bunch. So like there are games that are optimized that are like, oh, these are games that are great on Steam Deck. And they have a setup that works natively and has been tested. And those games should work pretty flawlessly. In my experience, they all did. So Cuphead was one of those games and Left 4 Dead was one of those games. Both of them, they ran really well. The control scheme was solid. It felt seamless. It felt like it was like a native experience. What I was impressed by was Duck Game being one of the games that I downloaded. It actually, when you launch it, it tells you that it is not optimized for Steam Deck and that it has certain features that they know don't work on Steam Deck. So I was like, okay, what's that going to be like? You know, is it not going to launch? How's it going to play out? The first time I tried to boot it, it didn't launch properly. And I was like, oh, I wonder if this game just isn't going to run. So I went and played Cuphead and then I tried to jump back into it and it launched the second time. And I was really impressed by how well it worked because that is a game that has a native controller support built into it and it auto maps stuff to controllers. So it was able to, through one of they have like a series of like maybe 5 or 10 different Steam templates, right, that are based on what kind of game it is. So it's like if it's a game with controller support, you can apply that default and it'll map everything to the best of its ability and then it'll let you make whatever changes you want to make. There's one for mouse and
default. Yeah, I think by default it's like controller support on the controller buttons, and then the 2 trackpads are like mouse, and then the triggers are like left click and right click for the mouse, and then you can like change those, like you say.
And it'll adapt it based on the game. So like Duck Game, for example, one of the reasons I picked it was because I wanted to pick games that I had played a lot and that I knew how they felt and what they were supposed to control like. So Duck Game was a good candidate for that. And when I booted it up, it literally worked exactly like if I was playing it on an Xbox controller plugged into my PC, like without making any adjustments. I didn't have to change a single thing, and it played exactly the way I thought it was supposed to. So that was, I thought, really impressive. And it shows that the templates that they've set up are actually pretty smart. And they have ones for games that are just mouse and keyboard, like Stacklands, and that was like I was using this trackpad to move the mouse, and then you press it to click. I found that to be a little clumsy.
I gave up with that. I just used the touchscreen because you can just touch the packs. It's so much easier.
Oh, I didn't think about that.
Yeah, you just drag them with your finger. It works 100% flawlessly. And it made me realize how good that game would be as a mobile game. I really hope that Sockbot bring it to mobile because it would be phenomenal.
But I think what I'm going to do is probably put the clicks, like the left and right clicks, onto the back paddle buttons rather than have it be the trackpad, because I found...
I think by default it also maps them to the triggers. So you can just click the triggers.
I'll have to try that, because I found that like clicking with the mouse pad while I was trying to like do, like I would regularly be like
tough,
dragging things around, and it was like a little clumsy, and I didn't like that But aside from that, I was impressed by how good the keyboard, the mouse and keyboard controls actually work on this. I think the biggest thing that feels limiting is since the trackpad is small, you can't do like a wide, swoop and like swoop across the screen and stuff like that.
You can. It's inertial based. So if you do it fast, it'll do it. It's like remember those old big roller balls that some people used to get? It feels 100% like that, even like the down to the haptics when you move it. And if you do it quickly, it'll shoot you over to the other side of the screen.
Good to know.
But it takes a while to get used to it. You mentioned the back paddles because I've got my own personal layout now. I spent ages tweaking it. I've made it as its own template that I can map to every single game. I've got the back paddles doing specific things that I like. So I've got I think it's L4 is I've got it so it pushes in the left stick, which is like a good way. I can hold that to sprint a lot easier than I can push in the stick and sprint.
That's a good idea.
Feels really good. And in Hitman, I've got R4 as like the right bumper, which is like his instinct, so you can see where you're going. Works really, really well. I've made it so I've used they call them layers. So I've got a Steam controller layer. When I hold the left trigger and have my finger on the right stick, it'll turn on gyro aim. So gyro is not working unless I'm aiming a gun, and it is so much better.
I'm glad you brought that up. So that is the feature I think is the worst thing on the console. And obviously I'm biased against gyro controls. We just talked about on Nintendo Noise how I don't like them. But when I was playing Left 4 Dead, the default is to have gyro on. And I remember you telling me this in one of our review discussions, but I forgot it at the time. So I played through an entire level, like a series of 4 levels on Left 4 Dead 2, right? So like a whole campaign. And I did the one where like you're in the hotel and there's the fire and then you get to the mall and you got to fill up the car with the gas and get away. And it wasn't until the 3rd level where I realized that gyro was on, because I was like, this is a little clumsy. Like I noticed that when I touched the right stick at all, right, that like the mouse reticle started moving a little bit. And I was like, this mapping is a little clumsy. Like, it doesn't feel like I'm using a controller. It feels like I'm trying to steer a mouse with a joystick. That's a little awkward. And I was like, let me go see if there's a different configuration. And then I was like, this is Valve's configuration? Why isn't this better? And I was like, this kind of sucks. This is a little clumsy. So I was going in and I was like, maybe if I turn the sensitivity down, it'll be a little bit less like jerky. And I saw that gyro was turned on. And that was when I remembered you told me that all it takes for gyro to turn on is for you to be touching the stick or the pad. And then it just activates. So I'm trying to steer my fucking character, and then it's also like jerking around because of any movement in my hands. And of course that's happening. I'm holding a giant handheld, right? So as soon as I turned that off, I was like, oh my God, this is smooth as butter. This is working great. I can aim so much better. Like, this is awesome. So I would recommend you turn off gyro, or map it in the way that Steve said, where you have like a button that you press to activate it so that you're not having it.
And I think if you could map it to a back button as well, right? Which is a great use case for those. I like it on the left trigger for like shooters, because I'm always going to be pulling it to look down a reticle, and it very much feels like the implementation in Horizon Forbidden West, where I can aim and then I do like fine granular controls, and I've like reduced the sensitivity down, so it very much is I use the stick for big sweeping movements, and then if someone's just moved out my way, I can just nudge the Steam Deck a little bit in one direction and do those like fine granular movements that you could do with a mouse traditionally, and not so much on a controller. So I really, really like gyro on it, but I do agree that when you're just moving around and you want to just like run about, it can get really annoying. To have it like before I'd remapped it, I was putting my finger on the edge of the stick rather than on top, because if you put it on the
That's
edge,
so funny.
it won't activate gyro, and it's just stupid that I was doing that. Whereas there are options that you can do it where if you hold down left trigger, you can make it activate gyro instead.
In Left 4 Dead, there was
which
another
is
thing
just
that
way more better
that I ran into that was funny, where I turned off the back paddles, because every time it was like trying to tell me to take an action, it was like press B or L4 or L, and I was like, stop telling me all the buttons I can press. It's fine if I can press them, but you're confusing me with like 3 different prompts to be like, press this button, and then it changes to 3 other buttons. I was like, oh my god, okay, this is too much. But that said, that level of granular control is awesome, and you have a ton of it. Like when I was playing Cuphead, and this will transition into my other talking point. I still think the button layout is bad, if I'm honest.
I disagree completely. I love it.
I think where the actual face buttons are is not in a good place. It's too difficult, I think. And I'll probably get used to it, right? This is, again, I've only been playing with this thing for like 2 days. Obviously, like, I've been playing with things like the Switch and stuff like that for longer, so I've had more time to acclimate to the control scheme. But I was playing Cuphead, and the base control layout for Cuphead is not good, like, period. Even when I played it initially, like, I switched the dash from being on one of the face buttons to being on one of the shoulder buttons, because it was basically impossible to, like, shoot and jump and dash all on the same thing. I find it to be even tougher on this because, like, you know, it's hard for me to show from this perspective, but let me turn around. So, like, if I'm holding both sticks and I want to press the buttons, you can see how far over my thumb has to go to press B, where, like, my hand is, like my thumb and my pointer are touching to be able to, like, get that fine motor control. And it's just, like, it's like kind of off on the side, right? Like the bevel is right on the fucking edge.
The worst one. Yeah, B's the worst positioning, but
that's one of the most important buttons to use, you know, like traditionally.
I think it probably depends on your hand size as well, because I haven't experienced that, but I have very small hands.
Yeah. Mine are like fairly big.
And like I thought I was going to struggle with it because of the size of the device. I do not. The sticks are comfortable. I find the grips comfortable. I find it very easy to get to the various buttons.
The face buttons are the one thing, and it's a shame.
Yeah, and like you can map some of those buttons to the back buttons. Like you could make B, L4, and I know that takes like time.
Yeah, and I'm gonna have to like relearn how to use buttons, you know, which is frustrating. But again, not a deal breaker, right? Like not something that I think is like should dissuade you or anything. And I think for certain kinds of games, it won't matter, right? Like if you're playing like a Game Boy emulator and you're only using the D-pad and the buttons, it'll be natural. But like in the normal like gamer mode, like I'm holding and I've got my buttons up on the shoulders, and like I find it awkward to press that B button, and I don't like that. But aside from that, I am actually really impressed by the ergonomics of the device. I think you were spot on in the conversation we had where you're talking about how like the side handles or whatever you want to call them that have the back buttons on them. It's heavy. It's certainly heavier than a Switch, but it's not uncomfortable to hold. And I find that the way that it ergonomically like fits in my hands is very comfortable, and I don't find my wrists feeling as tired as they do when I play the Switch for like a long time above me. So even like
and
the weight,
think a lot of that is because of the angle on the Switch of that stick offset. Like you have to kind of push your thumb down on the Switch, whereas they're in line, right? And that's how they were on the Wii U gamepad. They were in line, and it was way more comfortable than kind of twisting your thumb down. And I understand why they did it on the Switch, because they wanted to be able to use the Joy-Cons as like alternating controllers.
I think
I do just think that's way more comfortable.
It is. I think the thing I would do differently if it was up to me is I wish that the speakers weren't on the front of the device. I think it would be great if they were and granted, right, it would probably not sound as good, but if it was more akin to the Switch where it was on the bottom and you had a little bit more real estate here and you could move the trackpads down and then offset the buttons, I think that would be a better control scheme because there's 2 buttons here. There's a Steam button, which is like your home button on any other console, and then you have these like 3 dots that are, it's basically like on the main
Quick
home
action menu.
Yeah, and on the main home screen, that's where you can like change, you can look at the battery life, you can change the frame rate, it's a lot of like console level.
Well, there's a bunch
settings.
of stuff in there. So you've got the performance menu with that, but you can also view notifications, your friend list.
Yeah.
Whereas the Steam button is like bringing up the menu for like I want to view my library, I want to view the store. It's very much stuff that you would do within Steam, and the other stuff is related to the console and related to your account.
And you can like see, like your friends list and everything. I don't know if this is going to show up, but Zaid is there playing Football Manager as he's wont to do. So like those 2 buttons, I think if you get rid of these speaker buttons and you put those 2 buttons on like the same side, like on the left underneath the Steam button, you could easily move the trackpads down a little bit, at least on one side, and you could like offset them a little bit, and then this button placement would be so awkward.
More uncomfortable though for like RTSs, and I've played a bunch of RTSs on this. I love Age of Empires on this, and like it would make it probably too far down to hold comfortably. I don't know what a better solution would be than what they've come up with. It could just be that they need to move everything inward to the console a little bit, so the B's not 100% like almost on the edge. But I personally haven't had any issues with it, but people will, their mileage rate will vary depending on hand size, and comfort, and things like that.
And like I said, I don't think it's a deal breaker. I think like it's really the B button that's uncomfortable, but it's also like you have so many other button options that like that's what I did, right? Like when I was playing Left 4 Dead, I actually didn't think it was as bad because of like just the way I was holding the device for that game was a little different. So it was like, okay, like I just switched reload and the action button. So like reload was X and action was B because I'm not picking things up that often, and most of the time it's in like the safe rooms and stuff like that. So it's like, all right, like I could take my hand off and do that real quick and then switch back, and like it was like with Cuphead where I was like, this is not working. I can't use this button the way that they want me to use this button in a fast enough way. So that was when I was like, all right, let me remap it to one of these, the shoulders or the back buttons and just get used to that a little bit. And I have a feeling that back paddles are only going to become more common. You see them on like the Xbox Pro, not the Pro controller. What do they call it? The Elite. And then there's that. They made that addition to the PlayStation 4 at the very end of that life cycle. There's like a new Pro controller type thing that just came out. It's like a $250 third-party DualSense controller that has back paddles. So it's like, I have a feeling that back paddles are only going to become more common. So it's probably a good idea to get used to them now anyway. And the fact that you have so much modular control and you can remap literally anything in any game, like if that B button's bothering you, hey, you got 6-7 other buttons that you could try. So, hell, you could map it to the pad click, right? And like that could be a thing that you do.
Yeah.
So it's like you have a lot of options. So I think as much as that placement doesn't feel good to me, I think there's enough alternatives where it shouldn't really impede you from enjoying your experience. I'm really excited to get some emulators loaded up on this and try to do some other stuff that way as well. The last thing I wanted to mention, the only game that I encountered where I couldn't easily adapt one of the default controller setups or one of the user-generated ones or whatever was with Dragon Age, and I found out that that's because the PC version of that game is very different from the console version, and the console version has like a radial, like a weapon wheel and everything, and a bunch of these things that you can use to like play it on a controller naturally, whereas the PC version is actually built more like an MMO, and you have like a hot bar, and like it's very mouse and keyboard oriented, which was so hard to find a way to translate it. I was trying
and
all
I think
these
that's an
different
age
things,
thing.
and it just wasn't working. And it was also a weird experience launching the game because I opened it and it opened this old ass launcher, and it was like, oh, like download and like here's all the things and here's the text file if you wanna. And I was like, oh Jesus, this is like an old ass PC game installation experience, and that was the weirdest situation I had, was like trying to get that game to work, and I just couldn't find a layout that worked well. I think what I could do is take the one that was the closest and do what you did and just custom map everything, but I would also have to know what all the buttons do, and I don't because I've never played it on PC. So I have had the PC version for forever, but I never got around to playing it on PC.
What's cool is you can even make your own radio menus with Steam input. So in my Age of Empires layout, I've got it where if I hold down the left bumper and then move the radial menu, it will do numbers 1 to 9. So I can
Cool.
find my specific group that I want, and you could then map those to function keys or 1 to 9, whatever you need to do in order to do it. But it's a lot of work in order to do it. And I think some games are probably just too old. I had a similar issue with Oblivion in that the menus on Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion all think you're using a mouse and keyboard to navigate them, rather than the Xbox 360 version is different and it is mapped to a controller. They just didn't expect it. Whereas Skyrim, you'll encounter no issues because it's designed for both a mouse and keyboard and a controller. So I think probably some games are just a little bit too old, and you could always emulate Dragon Age Origins on a PS3 instead with RPCS3 if you wanted to.
Oh, I didn't know that was an option. There you go. Maybe that'll be the
so
way
you could always try that if you really wanted to play that game on handheld rather than using the PC version. You could always emulate the PS3
because
version.
my thought was, I was like, well, I kind of like, I feel like it would be better on Steam Deck because it's an old game and on a 4K resolution, like how much is it really going to be touched up versus how is it might look a little blown out, like, and it looked really nice on the small screen, and I was like, oh, this looks great. I was playing it in fucking 720, but I was like, it looks HD, like it looks nice on this screen, it's not bad. But I just I was like, oh man, I can't figure out how to interact with an object because I couldn't figure out where it had mapped a right click, and I was like, this is not tenable. But I hadn't thought about the emulation thing because my first thought there was like, I guess I'll have to wait for Game Pass to get added to this thing, and then I could download it because it is on Game Pass. But I bring that up to say it really seems like that is the limit, right? Like if it's one of those games that's in that awkward period where like Steam had brought PC gaming back, but it wasn't what it is today, and you didn't necessarily have the guarantee of parity between versions, and the PC version would be a lot different, or they wouldn't have native controller support, and there is no way to get native controller support and things like that. I think those kinds of games are really the only ones that you're going to struggle to find a setup that works for you. And I think to your point, Steve, like with Age of Empires, if you're willing to take the time to figure it out, you probably can. And if you aren't, somebody else probably will, right? Because I went through for the Dragon Age one. There was like 2 or 3 Steam Deck setups that people had made, and they were just not good. But it's like, hey, people are already trying. They're already trying to figure it out. So like, how many months is it before somebody who owns a Steam Deck likes Dragon Age as much as me and is like, I figured it out. There you go. So to put a period on this very long sentence, I think the exciting thing about Steam Deck is it's already really fucking cool. It's already in a place where it's cool, it's valuable, I can see where it fits into my gaming lifestyle in certain ways, and that's great. But I think it's a device similar, I guess, to like the argument I was making about Nintendo's expansion pass thing, right? Where it's like the value is going to grow over time as they iterate on the software, as the community gets larger, as the benefits of normal PC gaming community become focused on the Steam Deck, right? Where there are people who are like making mods for these old games where it's like, oh, this is a mod that'll make it work on Steam Deck, or like, here's this custom layout that I built and stress tested and it works exactly like an Xbox controller, right? Like, that stuff's gonna come. And I think it's more a matter of when than if in most situations. So like, with that in mind, it's a really fun device. And I think in this era right now where you see all these like third party hardware designers making these like little, you remember we went through that whole period where we were like, oh, we want emulators, like we want to get an emulator thing. What's the best way to do it? Should you hack a Vita? Should you buy one of these little third party like Switch like devices or whatever? I would say no. Like, now I think all those are like, unless you want one that's small, get the Steam Deck. It's got more versatility and it can do all those things anyway.
The fact that you can play modern games like up to the Switch if you want to, but I think the Wii U. Like,
just want to make it clear, we don't condone that. We don't condone piracy of Switch software.
I don't know, but say for example you own Breath of the Wild and you want to play it on Steam Deck at 60 frames per second, that's an option for you, and you can do that.
And like, you could get into mods and all that kind of fun stuff, that the only way to do that on a traditional Nintendo piece of hardware is to hack it, which is violating your terms of services and, could get you into hot water with Nintendo. You have the ability to do that here and to play around with it and have some fun, which is cool. There's a lot you can do there, and that's exciting.
I think it's really cool. I want to touch on the fact that you say this is only going to grow, right? And it's only going to get better. So I don't know if you've done it, but you can switch over between the stable and the beta channels for the operating system.
I have seen that. I actually think I may have set it to beta.
So beta this week, we got 2 big updates this week. On the stable channel, we finally got a lock screen. So you can secure your Steam Deck if you want to, because otherwise they've got access to your Steam account. And if you've got your Steam settings where they can just purchase things, they could buy what they want. They can access the desktop mode. You can add a lock screen now, and it works very similar to the Xbox's lock screen, where you can put the code in with like inputs. So you is that RT is like 1, and you can like create a pattern with like the sticks and the triggers and things.
How many buttons can you make it? Because I want to make it.
As long as you want.
I want to make it the Grand Theft Auto thing.
Yeah, you can make it Grand Theft Auto.
R2 L1, R2 left, down, right, up.
Yeah, you could absolutely do that, and then
make it the Konami code.
Yeah, I wonder how many people are actually doing that though. I can't see that that's going to be crazy secure. But then on the beta channel, we got way more exciting updates. So we got 2 big performance level features. So there's like variable rate shading. Like, you can force it to do half rate shading, which I would recommend everyone that's interested in this go and view Digital Foundry's video. Alex Battaglia has looked into this at great detail over there. Really, really great video, just looking into this. But the more exciting one is, I think I spoke about it with you on last week's episode, that the feature was there in Windows, but it hadn't made it over to the official SteamOS yet. And that you can change the refresh rate on the screen. So you can now change the refresh rate from anywhere from 40 to 60 hertz.
Yes.
I pretty much have mine locked now at 40 hertz, and I've got a lot of games that I've tweaked to hit 40 frames a second.
Now, why have you done that? You found that 60 doesn't run well, or?
So I can't hit 60 in some games and have them look in a way that I find acceptable. And some people might want to have it on low level settings where the shadows look like shadows and textures look a little bit more degraded. For me, it's a little bit too far, and I was locking it at 30 frames a second. But if you unlocked it, you could see that it was easily hitting 40, sometimes 50 frames a second in some games. Like, I can hit like 45 frames per second in Far Cry and in Hitman. 60, I just can't get there with it looking in a reasonable way. And also battery life, you can greatly save on battery life if you restrict the frame rate, because it's only refreshing the screen at half rate. And 40 feels so much smoother than 30, but you don't have the issue of the Steam Deck just not being able to hit 60 frames per second. So I can easily hit 40 frames per second in Hitman at high settings, not really having to tweak anything. Same deal in Far Cry 6. High settings, it can hit 40 frames per second. Looks great, feels great, and it's a really exciting feature, which I think is only going to get better. At the moment, it blanks the screen out a little bit when you change refresh rates, but after that, it's totally fine. And I've had no problems with it, so I recommend anyone that has a Steam Deck switch over to the beta channel, give that feature a try. I just think it makes games feel so much better. And perform so much better, and I've had no issues with it whatsoever. And if they can keep adding features like that for the foreseeable future, which seemingly they will do, I think it's only going to get better as a device. And if you've already got a big Steam library, like this for me is like a no-brainer. Like, it opens up all the possibilities, like you said, right? If you have got games like Dragon Age, like that game that you spent all these hours in, when we got this, I remember when we got the Switch, it was like, well, what do we play? We had Breath of the Wild, and then for a whole month, it was like a level of drought. You get this, and it's like nothing that, like, you don't have to worry about waiting for games. They're just all there. Your whole library's there, and you can try them out. It's really fucking cool.
Well, the cool thing is, and this is something actually I got to figure out too. You know how you can share your Steam library with people?
Yes.
Can you access those games?
Yeah.
Because I'm not seeing them come up. So, like,
I think if you search for them, I'm sure you can install them.
I'll have to figure it out, because I know that I have my one or two friends, I think, who have shared their Steam libraries with me that have deep Steam libraries, and I'm not seeing their games on here. Which is an easy way to get new games on your Steam Deck if you are not a Steam person and you have friends that are PC players. But
to be fair, though, like, the price for games, it's such a shock to the system as to how much they cost on console versus PC. I bought Hitman, the original 2016 one, for £2, and I was like, how was this so cheap?
Oh, Steve,
it was ridiculous.
You're gonna kill me. I'm gonna get back into Steam sales. So here's the thing. For those of you who are longtime listeners, you'll know that I had a period where I was a pretty active PC gamer. And I have, right now, 177 games in my Steam library.
Okay, so that's about pretty much exactly 100 more than I do.
Which is nuts, though. I don't even really play that many games on PC, but I got a lot of games. I got a lot of games here. You know, from Steam sales or from bundles.
Yeah, I was going to say Humble Bundle's a great way to get them. It's insane, absolutely insane how cheap PC games get.
But it's like I've got the BioShock trilogy. I've got like Bully. I'm looking forward to trying. Like I've got a lot of good games on here, and like I've got some sick games like Disco Elysium, which Zayd hooked me up with a copy of on PC that like now I can play a good handheld version of it rather than trying to play it on Switch. You know I'm getting Persona 4, right? Like I'm getting P4 Gold, and then I'm gonna try to beat that now. So there's a lot of good stuff here, and I think even if you're somebody who's like casually built up a Steam library, like I have 177 games I could play, and then in the Great on Deck section, I have 35 games that are already really well optimized for the platform. And like I said, more often than not, it seems like the games run pretty well, even if they're not optimized.
I've had Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition is marked as unsupported and that it won't even launch. Runs absolutely fine on the latest version of Proton. I just don't think they've retested it. Far Cry 6 isn't even on Steam. It's a game that's like not on the platform. I had to install it through the Ubisoft launcher. Runs absolutely fine.
Oh right, I forgot I can do that. I have to get I gotta get like the Epic Game Store and stuff on here and start claiming all those free games again.
If you install Heroic Launcher, it's super easy to download the games. It just does them for you, and then you just install them.
You're throwing out a lot of proper nouns here that I don't understand. Heroic Launcher?
Yeah, so there's two like secondary like third-party pieces of software that you can get from the Discover, basically the App Store on there. Look up Lutris, Lutris, and look up Heroic Game Launcher. Heroic supports GOG and the Epic Game Store. Lutris, I don't think the Flatpak version, which is the version in the Discover Store, works on Steam Deck just yet. So you have to compile it manually, so it's probably worth waiting for that. But Heroic Game Launcher absolutely works. I ended up installing the Ubisoft launcher, just the EXE, manually, and using that.
So just question. So Lutris and Heroic Game Launcher, they exist so that I can launch other things on Steam Deck, or do they are they things people specifically made for Steam Deck, or
no? So they were for Linux gaming. So Heroic Games Launcher, you log into your GOG account or you log into your Epic Games account. You can download the games through that. It will just install them onto the device, and then you just add them to Steam as a non-Steam game, and then they'll show up in your Steam library, and you can just play them.
So that's for GOG and Epic, and then what's Lutris for?
Lutris supports more stores, so it will support GOG, Epic, Ubisoft, Battle.net. It did support the Bethesda launcher, but that's going away.
And then you can
moving to Steam.
Open those all only in desktop mode, or is it?
No, if you in desktop mode, then go to open up Steam and click add non-Steam game. It will show up in the gaming mode as well.
Cool.
And then if you want to go the extra mile, look up Steam Grid DB, and you can download images, and you can just add them in, and it will look like a native Steam game.
Oh my God, Steam Grid DB. See, this is the thing, Steve. I need you to give me all the info. I've said this before. This is the great thing, you know. I mean, there are a lot of great reasons that we're friends, but I have just such an incredible benefit from you being my friend and liking to be a tinkerer, because I'm not a tinkerer, and you're just like, I spent 6 hours figuring this shit out. Here you go. I'll walk you through it. It's like, God bless you, buddy. God bless you.
Yeah, I spent a very long time digging through like Lutris install scripts to figure out how to install the Ubisoft launcher manually, and then have it so when I launch it from Steam, it doesn't open the Ubisoft launcher, and then I have to click onto Far Cry 6.
It just launches the most
ridiculous. Yeah, and it was the most ridiculous thing. I saved myself one button click, and I spent 2 hours figuring it out. But now it opens, and it's like a native game.
That's the thing, though. You spend the 2 hours, but now think of all the time you'll save in the future.
Yeah.
Right? Because it'll work with any game, right? You didn't just do it with Far Cry. You've figured it out with the Ubi launcher, period.
Yeah. Yeah, so you just need to know the ID of the game, and once you do that, it's just an argument you pass through, and it will launch that game. It's great.
There we go. Huh. It's good stuff.
But there's so much cool stuff. I can imagine it's only like we're probably like at this point, considering how quick things seem to move, we're probably like moments away from like the Xbox Game Pass like showing up or something. It's like some community version of that and being able to install those games.
I really hope so.
Right, because like if GOG works, Epic Game Store works, all of this stuff works, I think it's only a matter of time.
If they get Game Pass going on this thing, it's a whole new fucking ball game, man. Like it, you know what I mean? Like that is gonna be such a fucking game changer if it's like, hey, Game Pass, you can play it anywhere, right? And it's like, yeah, I know, you say that, but it runs like shit on mobile. I don't want to use cloud. Like, do I have confidence that it'll get there? Absolutely. Yeah, like I do. I think Microsoft is on a good path, and for certain games it already runs pretty well. We've talked about that a lot. But like, fuck that, right? Like nobody really wants to play video games on their little phone screen if they could play it on a nice, big, fucking, like, pretty handheld screen like this, right? Like, I would much rather play Game Pass games on this motherfucker. And if I can bust out any game on Game Pass on this, it's over. It's over for you hoes, all right? I'm done. You're never going to get me to go outside again. Like...
I feel like I'm going to play some less intense games through cloud gaming on Steam Deck.
Yeah.
Xbox Cloud Gaming. Like I really want to play Life is Strange True Colors, and like it's hard for me to justify buying it on Steam when I could just play it on my Xbox. But if I can play it through cloud gaming,
is that on Game Pass?
I want to play it. It's on Game Pass, yeah. So
They
if I want
added
to
True
play
Colors
that,
to Game Pass already? Wow.
yeah, True Colors is on Game Pass,
Hell yeah.
and it's on cloud gaming. So I'm probably gonna try that on Steam Deck, and if it works, fine, great. And then
That might
I've
run
got
okay.
cross progression. Like I can play it on Xbox anyway. So if I want to just the hour I want to spend in bed playing it, I can do on Steam Deck, and then when I want to, I can just play it on my TV. So I'm gonna give it a go and see how that works. But
I
it
didn't
takes
even think about the cross progression thing.
yeah, it all works. So it'll just sync over, so there's no issue if it's cloud gaming. It will sync over on Xbox, which is good.
That's awesome. I'll tell you what, I really feel like this has the chance to make me like play more games more than once. Again, too, where it's like, oh, like I want to replay this game, but I don't want to waste like TV game time with it, right? Where I'm like, you know what I mean, right? Like that, there's like that.
100%. Like, why would you like you want to play something new on your fancy new console? But I feel like this is a great opportunity to play those older games. Like you went and played Dragon Age Origins. It's a game you love and the game you know hasn't had a remake, so why not go and play it on Steam Deck if you can?
Dude, I was so disappointed that I couldn't get it to work. Like when it booted up, like I hadn't booted up Dragon Age in forever, right? And like if you're a newer listener, if you haven't heard me talk about, like Dragon Age is one of my favorite games of all time, and like it's a game that I've played. So if you're not familiar, right, the game starts with a character creator, and you can pick your race. There's like one of three races that you can pick, either human, elf, or dwarf. And then for each of them, they have their own, like you can be a human noble or a human peasant. You can be a Dalish elf who grew up in the woods, or you can be a city elf who grew up in the city as like a second-class citizen, basically. And then if you're a mage, you grow up in the mage tower, right? So there's like all these different backgrounds. So I think all said and done, there's like maybe, what does that come out to?
It's like 8.
Yeah,
4 to each.
Because it's 2 each, and then elves and humans can be mages, so it is 8. Yeah, but dwarves can't be. Either way, point being, there's like in the neighborhood of 10 different character roles you can do that significantly change the game, and I've done all of them. That's how much I liked this game. I've played it like through 10 or so times. And I hadn't booted it up in, I don't know, a decade probably, like not since high school maybe, and like booted it up, had the little intro title sequence. It's like there's this like sword swipe and a blood sound, and then it like turns into the dragon.
You're like instantly smiling.
Yeah, I was like, oh
yeah.
my god, like Jesus Christ.
I was like that when I heard the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion music. I was like, holy shit, I'm playing this on a handheld. It was like, what the fuck? It's just that you just can't get it into your head.
It's exciting.
You know, can you imagine how if someone had told you could play this on a handheld when you were playing it originally, you'd just be like, no way.
Yeah, you'd be like, how?
Literally no way.
How would I even be able to see what I'm doing, right? Like, it's like, no fucking way. I felt that way when I was playing Left 4 Dead, right? Like, Left 4 Dead 2 was a game that was contemporary when I was, you know, in high school or whatever. And playing it now, like, especially, like, it's up-res, like, it looks nice and clean. I was like, this looks like a fucking new game. Like, it's insane. You know, and, like, it doesn't look like the most groundbreaking, most pretty, whatever, but, like, on a handheld, on a small screen, like, it looks great. It runs great. And, like, that's one of the things I've been really impressed with, too, is, like, I've only experienced like a hitch 2 times maybe. I had like 1 or 2 times where I had some slowdown in Cuphead, and 1 or 2 times where it happened in Left 4 Dead where there was just like a million fucking zombies on the screen or something, and it was like I had a little bit of a stutter. But by and large, like the performance is really solid and you know, stable for something that is an experimental new piece of hardware.
And that's something you can dial in, right, with the settings. If you continue to notice slowdown in Left 4 Dead in specific areas, you could probably reduce some of the textures, or figure out change the shadow, turn off the anti-aliasing.
Yeah.
There's all of those functionality and features, or just change the refresh rate on the screen. If it's targeting 60, you can make it target 40. There's a whole host of things you can do in order to avoid that. I just looked it up, by the way. Dragon Age Origins is one of the support games in RPCS3, so you should probably just try that and see how it works.
Let's fucking go. Wait, is there an Xbox 360 emulator?
There is. It's not very good. RPCS3 is way better. you have to actually install the entire operating system of the PS3 through the emulator to get it to work.
That's insane.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. So it just emulates the hardware, and it runs really well. Like I've been playing Persona 5 at 60 frames per second, and it's kind of flawless. It's actually mind blowing.
I think I'm gonna have to buy like a 2 terabyte card for this thing. I had like an extra one for my Switch that I formatted and popped in, and I was like, this is not big enough.
It's full already. Yeah, mine's full. I'm just I need a new one. I think
I'm gonna get a 2 terabyte. What do those cost?
What I know, 1 terabyte is about $150.
It's what is it? What are they called?
Micro SD.
Micro SD. I'll tell you what. There's too many types of storage. I can't keep the name straight at this point.
But like, you can also just hot swap those, so you could have multiple in your case if you wanted to, with different games and stuff on.
Yeah, but Walmart has one right now, $56. Might not be high speed, but
you should definitely look and see if it's compatible, because that's a really good deal.
I don't know. Some of these are not that expensive.
I'm really glad that you're enjoying it, though. I kind of worried a little bit that you were just gonna get it and be like, it's okay. I'm just gonna carry on playing on PlayStation or whatever.
I hope that doesn't happen. I think right now I'm like pretty in on it. I'm having fun with it, and like I'm having fun experimenting with it. And I think given how nostalgic I am and how much I like to go back and play old games, I think I will probably get a lot of use out of it. Because I think it's going to be one of those things where whenever there's like right now, right? Like there's a drought in the release schedule. There's not a big game that I'm like waiting for or that I'm in the middle of. I mean,
I gotta say, finding indies to fill that slot, like I would have never played Fears to Fathom. It's only on PC. Like, why am I gonna play that with friends?
Like, I'm gonna play Inscription now, right? Like, I'm gonna get Inscription and play it because I'm way more likely to sit and play that game on my couch with headphones. And
I did the same when I was playing that. I was playing it on my laptop, but I had to like stream it from my desktop to my laptop because it wouldn't play on my laptop because I didn't have Windows on it.
Yeah.
And now I can just play it on Steam Deck. It's so cool, but it's awesome being able to play all of these new experiences I missed out on because they were only PC games, and so many indie games come to Steam first, or Itch.io. Like, you can just go on Itch.io and find tons of new games, like Stacklands, for example, PC only.
I think
I love being able to play that handheld.
I think one of the things that's going to be interesting for me now is, does this make me buy games more than once? Because I think I could see myself running into what I did with like Stardew Valley, where like I bought Stardew Valley on PC. That's where I started playing it, and then I was like, this is going to be better on Switch. When it came to Switch, that was where I actually put more time into it. I could see myself doing that with certain games where it's like, there's this game that Trendy Brendy from the community recommended to me called Koromon, and it's like a Pokemon spiritual successor type game, and it's, Steve, it's actually literally exactly what you asked for, where it's old school pixel art style, it's a little bit harder, and it's like got a lot of kind of like quality of life innovation for like fans of the genre. And everybody's like, when's it coming to Switch? When's it coming to mobile? When's it coming to Switch? And like, I swear to God, I have tweet notifications turned on for them because I've been waiting for them to announce the Switch version. Once a week, they put out a tweet where they're like, we've heard your requests. It's coming to Switch. It's coming to mobile. We're sorry. We don't know when. Like, please be patient. And now I'm at the point where I'm like, do I just get it on Steam? Like, do I just play it on my Steam Deck?
Right now, you absolutely should. It's £12 at the moment. You should absolutely just play it on Steam.
Why not? Right? Like, why not? Which is interesting because it's like,
it's where I'd want to play it anyway. Yeah, I think it's where I want to play. I think the Steam Deck is my favorite handheld, but that could just be recency bias, But I think it's taken over the Switch just because of the sheer amount of games I can play. I can play some of my favorites that are just impossible to play on the Switch. Like playing Hitman as like a TV game when McCall is like watching TV and I'm like sort of loosely watching it, but I'm also just like strangling someone and then disguising myself as them. It's amazing.
I think there is a recency bias element, but I also think that this thing has come out at the right time, because I think the Nintendo Switch is, I think, unequivocally, right? Like, forget the Steam Deck exists. I think the Switch is the best handheld that's ever been made right? And I think most people would agree with that, at least on a hardware level, right? Like, it's got a great library. It's a great, like, piece of tech. It works really well. The whole modular thing works really well.
And it's the one I would recommend normal
to anybody.
Get. Like
anyone could get.
I would not recommend my parents, for example, get a Steam Deck if they're not.
Your dad might have
really
fun
wanting to nitpick. Dad would, but like, mom, is she ever going to be able to figure that out? No, but she could figure out putting a cartridge in and playing some Kirby if she wanted to.
Right. Yeah, and you can't undersell that, right? I don't think the Steam Deck is a viable competitor to the Switch right now. Could it be? Maybe.
To be.
But yeah, I don't really think it wants to be, and I think that's fine. But I think the fact that it came out now when the Switch is showing its age and like the hardcore Switch community, right? We've been talking about this on Nintendo Noise, our sister show. Yeah, I would like a new Switch. I am kind of ready for a Switch too. I would like a Switch that has a more under the hood and can play higher quality games or not quality. Quality is a misnomer. Like higher intensity
Fidelity,
games.
I think.
Yeah, fidelity is a good. Yeah, like a Far Cry, right? That is a game that would not run on the Nintendo Switch ever, right? It's pretty cool that you can run it on this guy, and it does have me thinking of like, well, maybe I download Far Cry 3 again and play that in handheld mode, or like something like that. That is very promising. It's very cool. It's a very cool device, and it has that hot factor right now for sure. I struggle to say if I could see it beating it out for me as a favorite, because there is so much work associated with it, but I don't know. I'm having fun with it right now, and I think
I feel like it's maybe for me it's like 15-20 minutes of work per game, and I can imagine new games that come out again would probably just be like, there's a Steam Deck
that's the thing.
Just select that, right?
I think a lot of the barrier to entry is going to disappear, because even some of the stuff that you were talking about earlier, right? Like Lutris and the Heroic Game Launcher and all that. How long until you don't even need that shit? And there's a native GOG launcher that you can just download, right? Like probably not long. Like I honestly think that the idea that Valve would not want any of that is not the case.
Oh, of course they
do. Want everything.
Like EA Play is on Steam.
Right.
And you can like run that through here if you want to. And I can imagine they want everything going through Steam and getting you on their device and in
keeping you in their ecosystem.
Yeah.
And with that in mind, right? The question becomes, okay, so then the only reason to not have your game or your launcher or whatever on Steam Deck is because you, the publisher, the developer, don't want it there. And what would possibly be the reason for that, right? Because, again, take it back to Game Pass, right? Xbox goes on and on about how they want Xbox to be everywhere. They want Game Pass to be everywhere. They don't give a shit if you're playing it on your phone or on your Steam Deck or where, as long as you're playing it, right? Well, then why wouldn't they want a launcher there? Same with GOG, same with Epic. I mean, Epic maybe not because they're direct competitors, but even so, like, if I'm paying you for your game and playing it on the hardware, what difference does it make, right? You're still getting my money. You get more activated users. That's the name of the game these days.
Yeah, I feel like Fortnite has no reason not to be here, right? Because it's a free game anyway. Why not have Fortnite and Rocket League at the very least on here? And if you want to continue to have your store as like an option, fair enough. Might not want to have people booting that through Steam and having to like, maybe there's like some kind of revenue share that they would have to give as part of the agreement, which they might not want to do. But
yeah,
I don't know why they wouldn't put their games on there at this point, because it's seemingly Steam Deck is still selling like hotcakes and everyone wants one and I think it's justified because I think it's a great device.
I've still got my pre-order for the one that's supposed to come in Q3, so I'm gonna try and shop it around to some of my friends and convince somebody else to buy it, because it's hot. It's hot right now.
Yeah, and why would you want to miss out on capitalizing on all of those players? And I think it's only going to grow. And we know that Steam's allowing anyone, any manufacturer, to put their operating system on and use their like launcher and stuff if they want to. So I can see we'll see some competing devices coming out soon as well. Whether they can hit this price point, which is frankly ridiculous, I don't know. Like they must be losing money on that base model. They must be.
Probably. But I mean, again, right? Like, that's pretty much always been the model for hardware. You sell hardware at a loss and you make the money back on software, right? And
yeah,
everybody already knows that people spend a gross amount of money on the Steam store. So, like, if you can get somebody like me who's like a lapsed Steam player to be like, oh shit, maybe I'm going to spend a couple $100 a year on Steam again. They made their money back on me, right? And even if they don't, I'm out here evangelizing. I'm out here saying that it's cool and that you should probably get one, right? So, like, there's value in that. I don't know. I don't think they should sell the cheap model, though. The cheap model is, I think, it's not worth the money. I wouldn't get it.
It's the price point, and it's the most popular one in Europe.
That's crazy to me.
Plus, people just open them and change the drive out.
Yeah.
You can do that.
Yeah,
just take the back off and change the
if you're
drive
that kind of
you want
person,
to.
then, you know, more power to you. But I'm certainly not. I'm not opening this fucking thing, right? So if
I would break it.
If you're a normie like me, get the middle one. The middle one's the way to go, I think.
Yeah, me too. I think the 256 gig is a decent amount of storage, and you've got the micro SD cards that you can capitalize on as well. And I love the fact that it comes with so much stuff. Like, not having to think about buying a case. Like, that's something everyone buys day one when they get a Switch, right? You've got to factor that into the cost. You don't have to worry about that with the Steam Deck. I don't know. I think the packaging that they shipped in was really cool. The fact that it's kind of bare bones. There's just like, here's a brown box with a case in.
It's so weird.
Why do you need any more than that?
It looks like a shoebox, straight up.
Yeah, it's so strange.
I was expecting there to be like a cool Steam logo on it, and I was like, "Oh, this is nothing, huh?" Like, but
yeah, it's
whatever.
just a brown box, and like once you tear your paperwork off the top with the shipping details, there's nothing else. There's no other markings on that box.
You know what I'm realizing though? You might have to walk me through. Have you uninstalled anything from this thing? Because I'm thinking about it now. If I'm gonna buy this expanded memory, I think I'm gonna have to uninstall Emudeck and reinstall it because I set it up to put my ROMs on my native hard drive, and I don't think I'm gonna have enough space for all the ROMs I want to put on it.
I have not, but I can tell I have not uninstalled anything. But I can tell you how to change Emudeck over to point to a different folder.
Oh, you can do that? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
You can point each individual emulator to look at a different directory as well.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm gonna need you to show me how to do that. But, I'll tell you what. We did not intend to talk about the Steam Deck for another entire episode, but here we are. So, I hope this was interesting to you, because I'm very excited to talk about it some more.
Yeah, I'm glad you were able to get your hands on one. And I'm looking forward to watching you play some Fears to Fathom on it, because I think it'll be fun. Although you probably just play that on your PC because you can just capture it directly. But
probably easier.
Yeah, it would be. But
that's going to be one of my next projects too, is figuring out how to use it for streaming and Let's Plays and stuff like that.
Yeah, because my capture card doesn't let me set resolution, so it's a bit of a pain in the ass. So I would like to be able to say I want this to pretend to be 1080p, so I need to figure it out myself, because I feel like being able to play like Wind Waker HD or something would be really cool. And just being able to play it on the Steam Deck and then it just shows up on the screen. So I need to figure that out as well.
Well, there you go. So everybody, thank you for joining us here on another episode of the FlipScreen Games podcast. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I enjoyed having it. I am excited to have my hands on this this shiny new toy, and we'll certainly have more to say about it in the weeks and months to come. We'll see if it can become a mainstay in our gaming digest over the next couple months and years. I think that's going to be the ultimate question, is like, you and I, right? By the end of this year, how many games have we played on Steam? How many games have we gotten on Steam rather than on another platform, something like that? That's going to be the very interesting question, I think. And I think if that dock technology comes around sooner than later and you're able to drop it in and get the 4K 60 FPS kind of experience that we're used to on consoles, that'll be a real game changer on deciding where you play a game. So
yeah, I wonder if it's going to make you play PC games at your desk anymore. Like, oh, I was playing some of this on my PC, and I'll now pick it up or back on Steam, because I'm curious if you can try out some of the cloud sync stuff, because I don't really play PC games because my computer's old, and I'd be interested to see if you can see if that works. Like,
I'll tell you what, cloud sync does work. And the reason I know this is I downloaded Cuphead, and when I opened it, it had my previous files.
That's fucking cool. Like, that is so cool. And the fact that you can just switch between devices, that's awesome.
Yep. Yeah. I didn't even think to bring that up with Cuphead, but yeah, I was like, oh, I'm gonna start a new file, and I was like, oh, look, my other files are here. Holy shit. There you go.
Yeah, because like if you pick that up on Switch, you're starting from scratch, and like you don't get to pick up where you left off. So it's really cool that you can just carry on. Like, especially if you're in the middle of playing a game at the moment. Like, say for example, you're playing with friends on PC, and then you like turn it off, and you're just like, I want to carry on with this in bed. You can do that. It's really cool.
Yeah, very interesting. I'm wondering how like community stuff will work on it as well, and like, you know, will there be a point where I can get like the Discord app on it and have
you
like?
You can do that already.
But can you have that running while you're not in PC mode?
Yeah.
No shit.
And you can just switch between the two. It works just fine.
Wow,
it's really cool.
Okay, well, that's another thing I'll have to check out.
Do you know the other thing I really want to try is running OBS on it and see if we can just stream and capture directly, and see if like, do I even need a capture card?
Probably lower
directly.
Effort games it probably could, but yeah, something like Far Cry. I'm
curious though, because like I wonder how many people don't have a PC in order to stream and stuff, and they might want to be able to play something. Like, is this a viable option?
Could be. Anyway, we could probably talk about this for another hour, so we'll wrap it there for today. Thank you guys for joining us. Thank you for your support over on patreon.com/FlipScreenGames. Thank you all for tuning in. And remember, if you want to go find us anywhere we are, all over the web, head over to FlipScreen.games. That's our website. Come join the Discord. Tune into a Twitch stream. Go check out the YouTube channel. However you choose to engage or be a part of the community, we greatly appreciate you. And we'll catch you next week for another episode of the FlipScreen Games podcast. Take it easy.